Okay, welcome back from your bonus break, and welcome back everyone who was in the technology track room for the afternoon. So at this point, I am pleased to invite to the stage Joe Pasqua, our Executive Vice President of Products, to give you a preview of what's coming ahead in MarkLogic 9. So take it away, Joe.
Thank you, Denise. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We started the morning with our CEO, Gary Bloom, talking about the problem of data in silos. And I'd like to spend just a few minutes talking about how we arrived at this problem, and then a little bit about what we're going to do about it. And to start with, I should mention that I'm from Silicon Valley. But not every company in Silicon Valley looks like this one. There are companies like MarkLogic that are mature companies with great leadership, very experienced leadership, and great teams. And I put this picture up for a reason. And the reason is that there are a lot of these little small companies in the world, but there are also many large enterprises out there. And the enterprises, those large companies, they're really envious of the small companies. And they're envious of the small companies because the small companies are agile. They move quickly. They get things done quickly and efficiently. And the large companies would love to be like that. They would love to be able to have that same agility that the small companies have. But the secret is that the small companies are actually envious of the big companies also. And the small companies are envious of the resources that the big companies have. And it's not just about money. It's not just about those kinds of resources. It's that they have lots of products and lots of data, and the ability to bring together data from one area with data from another area, do research, do analysis, and operate their businesses on the basis of many different units coming together. These large companies have synergy, and the small companies would really love to have the kind of synergy that's possible in a larger organization. And that's the way things are supposed to work. You start out as a small organization that's agile. You work hard and you gain some success. And with that success, you grow and you scale. And once you get a certain amount of scale, you maybe have multiple products that are available, multiple services, you gain that synergy. You start to be able to use those services together, to bring data together, to bring your resources together. And that synergy reinforces your success. So you get even more successful because you're able to bring your data and bring your resources together. That's the way it's supposed to work. Unfortunately, what usually happens is that when companies start getting big, instead of synergy, they get partitioning. So you're big, you have many things going on, so you decide you need to break them into parts in order to make them manageable. And once you break them into parts, you end up with data in silos, because each one of those parts is building their own data structures, their own data organizations, and they don't work together. And those silos, as we've heard throughout the course of the day, lead to greater cost, greater complexity, and greater risk. And in fact, the silos actually end up getting rid of the agility that you had in the first place. So the agility that you use to make yourself successful is eroded by the cost and complexity of your data silos. So the good news is that you're successful and you've got scale. The bad news is that every company that reaches a certain degree of success and scale ends up with data silos. It's completely universal. When you start getting to a certain success level, a certain scale level, you end up with data silos. And that's an artifact of the technology that we've been using over the last 30 or 40 years. And the two things that we really wanted, agility and synergy, have completely disappeared from the picture. So why is that? Well, if we look at agility and we look at scale and we look at how agility changes as scale goes up, as scale increases, we all know what happens. Agility goes down. As scale goes up, agility goes down. But why is that? Why must it be that way? Well, we have coordination cost. And coordination cost is simply that when you have scale, you have lots of different data, lots of different departments, lots of different processes and people. You have to coordinate between them. I have to talk to you. You have to talk to him. We have to coordinate the way our data is organized. And all of that takes time and effort and money. And for the data aspect, it's particularly difficult with relational data because the data is very rigid. And we have to coordinate very carefully in order to use our data together. So our coordination cost goes way up as our scale gets larger. And you might think, okay, that's fine, but eventually I'm going to have all of my resources coordinated. So I will have a coordination cost, but at least it will stop going up. It will plateau. But the problem is that none of our businesses are static. We want to grow our businesses. We want to add new products. We want to add new services, new customers. We might want to buy another company and integrate them into our company. So once you do that, your coordination cost starts going up again. Because if you're growing and changing, you're adding more systems, more people, more departments, you've got that increasing coordination cost. So this is a pretty worrisome situation because we're all large businesses, we're all getting larger. We want the agility, we want to be able to move quickly and enhance our organization and the services that we're providing, but our costs are going up and up and up. And the time it takes us to do anything is going up and up and up. So what do we do about that? What does it take to bring that coordination cost down and make ourselves agile again? Well, this morning we heard from one of our wonderful external speakers that we must predict the future. And another wise person once said that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And that's what we're doing at MarkLogic. In MarkLogic 9, we're continuing to invent the future and give you better and better ways of integrating data and reducing your coordination costs and increasing your agility. So you can have the best of both worlds, synergy and agility in a large organization. So in MarkLogic 9, we're really focusing in three primary areas. We're going to make it easier and more powerful to integrate data. We're going to continue to provide the best possible security for all of your data. And we're going to make it even easier to manage your data and manage MarkLogic. So let's start with data integration. The very first thing that we are going to do for you with data integration is help you focus on the semantics of your data, the meaning of your data. So for those of you who were here in the last session, Chris pointed out that integrating your data is very challenging because you're dealing in relational technology at a very low level. You're dealing with the physical layout of your information, and you don't really understand the relationships between your data. So in MarkLogic 9, we're introducing a new technology called entity services. Entity services will allow you to describe to MarkLogic your business concepts. You will be able to say, this is what I mean by a customer. This is what I mean by a product. Here's how a product relates to a customer. And you'll be able to do that at a very high conceptual level, not the low physical level that you have to do it today with relational technology. And because MarkLogic will have these descriptions of your conceptual entities, it will be able to start doing more work for you. For example, if you have a description of a customer entity, we will automatically create interfaces into the database for that entity. You'll have new REST endpoints defined automatically for you by the database. And you'll be able to interact with those entities at a very high level, even if they're coming from many different systems that all have slightly different descriptions of what a customer is and how it's represented. So entity services is a very powerful new capability that will be released in MarkLogic 9, but we will continue to enhance in MarkLogic 10 and MarkLogic 11. This is a very fundamental capability that we will continue to build on for years to come. It's a new model for developers using databases. So once you have your business entities and your conceptual entities defined, MarkLogic gives you very, very powerful mechanisms for querying those entities and searching those entities. In MarkLogic 9, we're adding an entirely new way of doing that, which we call the Optic API. And the reason that we call it the Optic API is that we give you multiple lenses, multiple ways of looking at your data. So MarkLogic is fundamentally a document database. You've been hearing about that all day. So the Optic API gives you a great way of querying data in document format, denormalized format natively through the Optic API. But sometimes you like to see your data in a tabular format. You might be adding things up. You might be doing aggregation or roll-ups. Sometimes it's just nice to see your data in a tabular form. So the Optic API will let you see that same data, the same data stored in your documents, but will allow you to view it in a tabular form through this API. Your semantic data that's stored in MarkLogic, you'll also be able to view through the semantic lens of the Optic API. So as a developer, you can choose what's most appropriate for the task that you're working on at the moment. If it's documents, that's great. Use the document lens. If you want to see it as tabular format, no problem. You can use the tabular lens. The Optic API lets you bring the data together the way you want to see it and the way that's most efficient for you. And we've developed several underlying technologies, including a brand new index that makes all of this extremely fast and extremely efficient. And we've used that underlying technology of the Optic API, and we're applying it to our SQL interface. So MarkLogic is a NoSQL database, but we have a SQL interface to MarkLogic. And we have a SQL interface because we know all of you have a big investment in SQL and SQL tools like BI tools. And we want you to be able to use those with MarkLogic. We want to build a bridge from your old technology to the new technology. So with all of the work that we're doing for the Optic API, we're enhancing our SQL interface and our ODBC interface. It will be faster, use less resources, and work better in a distributed fashion across a MarkLogic cluster. So we're very excited about the work that we're doing with SQL within our NoSQL system. We also need to make it very easy for you to get information into MarkLogic. This morning, Gary talked about the fact that getting data into MarkLogic easily is one of our key advantages. And in MarkLogic 9, we will be extending that advantage by providing the data movement SDK. This is a toolkit that will expose all of the power of MarkLogic for integration with other tools like Camel and Spark that will allow you to use the technologies that you like to use to integrate data into MarkLogic and get data out of MarkLogic in whatever manner is most appropriate for the problem that you're trying to solve. So we're taking the data movement technology that we've built into our own tools, and we're making it available to you. So those are just a few of the areas that we're focusing on for data integration. And of course, what we're doing by giving you all of this is we're allowing you to take data from all of these different systems and bring them together in one place. Well, if you think about that, every one of those systems has very sensitive information in it. It has information about your business. It has information about your customers, your suppliers, and more. And now you're bringing all that data together. Well, the place that you're putting all of that data better be very secure. And MarkLogic is very secure. It is the only NoSQL database with common criteria certification. And that certifies the security of the product, and it certifies the security of the processes that we use to build the product. But we're not content to stay with the level of security that we have today, even though it's very, very good. We're going to add to it. And the first thing we're going to do is add a very sophisticated encryption capability. So you can already encrypt data with MarkLogic today, but we're improving on that. And if you look at sort of a simple approach to encryption, the simple approach in white here on the left, the data is stored encrypted on your disk, so nobody can get to it, but it's decrypted by the file system. So if you're a system administrator, an insider who has access to that system, the encryption isn't helping you at all. So this type of encryption does not help you from the insider threat. And it does not help you from a hacker who gains the credentials of a system administrator. So what we're doing is we're encrypting the data on disk, but we're moving the decryption directly inside of MarkLogic. So when your data is moving from the disk into MarkLogic, as it's going through the file system, it remains encrypted. It only becomes decrypted when it's inside of MarkLogic. So an insider, a system administrator who has complete access to the computer that's running MarkLogic, even that person will not be able to get to your private information. But we didn't stop there. We said, what about the database administrator? The database administrator has access to all of this information. So we said we want to create a new role. We want to limit what the database administrator can do. So we added a security administrator. And the security administrator is the one that manages the security and the operation of the encryption mechanism. The security administrator is the person who manages encryption keys. And managing encryption keys well is the hardest part of encryption. Encrypting data and decrypting data is actually not that hard. It's building a system that incorporates encryption and incorporates key management in an overall holistically secure way. That is what's really difficult, and that's what we're doing in MarkLogic 9. And we're going to allow you to use our own key management system. MarkLogic will ship with key management. If you want to run in the cloud, we'll allow you to use the native key management solution that's provided by AWS, for example. If you have a corporate key management system, we will integrate into your corporate key management system. And we use a completely standards-based approach to allow you to do that. So an extremely sophisticated encryption mechanism that's meant to keep your data safe, not only from hackers, but from the insider threat. So that's encryption. We also need to focus on the privacy of the data. So encryption is going to keep people from looking at your data, but oftentimes you want to share your data. That's the point. You remember we talked about synergy. I want to take data from one area and let other people in my organization use it. That's how I make my organization more powerful. I get the value of my data by sharing it, but I have to share it carefully. So the very first thing we're doing is adding element-level security. And what does that mean? So MarkLogic is a document database. Everything is stored in documents. And you can kind of think of a document like a row in a relational database. So MarkLogic already has fine-grained document-level security. So think of that as being like having row-level security. You can say, for these particular roles, who can see which rows in MarkLogic, who can see which documents. But we didn't want to stop there. So we're going inside of the document. And we're allowing you to mark your document and say that particular elements of your document should only be visible to certain kinds of people. So in this example here, I have a document on the left, and I have a user who has a top secret clearance. And that user can query that document, and they'll be able to see everything in that document. But if I have a user who has only a secret clearance, when they query that document, the information, the element that is marked top secret will disappear. It will be as if that information were never in the document. And if I have somebody with no security clearance, they won't see anything. And they will never know that information was there. No leakage of data happens. So this is a very powerful feature. It was requested by our government customers who have very, very strict security needs. We're making it available to everyone. But we're not stopping there. We're introducing a more general notion of redaction. And again, this is, I want to share information with you, but I want to limit what you can see in that information. So here we have another document, and part of that document contains personally identifiable information. Information about me or about a customer that's sensitive. So now if I want to share this information within my company, I may want to get rid of that PII. I may want to make it disappear. But sometimes I want to keep the information there. I just want it masked. So here I've got a phone number and a social security number. And MarkLogic can identify the patterns. It can say, this is what a phone number looks like. And it can identify it. And instead of getting rid of it, it can just obscure the information. So I can pass it along. I can pass this information to a researcher. The researcher can get a lot of value from this information, but no personal information has been lost. I can also take a name, and I may still want to have names in my documents because my test system requires a name to be there, for example. But I don't want the real name. I want to change the name. I want to substitute a different name. And I want that substitution to happen consistently so that if I have my name, Joe Pasqua, here, it always comes out as John Smalls. So we have a dictionary-based substitution. And we have a number of other types of substitutions that are built into MarkLogic. And we also have an extension capability. So if there's a custom substitution that you want to perform that makes sense for your business, you can add it. And in addition to using this mechanism to share information within your organization, this feature also gets used for operational purposes. So every organization might have a production system of MarkLogic that they're running their business on. They also have a test system. And they would like the test system to have the same data that's in the production system so that they can do the best testing possible. Except they don't want the sensitive information in their test system. They don't have the same people running their test system. They don't have the same controls. They want to limit the information in their test system. With redaction, they can take their information from their production system, get rid of the sensitive information, and put it right into their test system and get the best possible test experience. So redaction is one of these capabilities that I think everybody is going to use. Okay, so now you've integrated all this data into MarkLogic. You've used encryption and redaction and other features of MarkLogic to keep it secure. You're building more and more applications on MarkLogic. You have one system running in Tokyo, and it's replicating its data to another system in San Francisco, and it's replicating its data to another system in London. And you have your production environment and your test environment and a development environment. You have a lot of MarkLogic in your organization. So we want to help you manage your large and growing footprint of MarkLogic. So the first thing that we're doing to help you with that is we're creating an entirely new tool called MarkLogic Ops Director. And MarkLogic Ops Director is going to allow you to monitor, manage, and optimize all of your MarkLogic clusters, all of your locations, all of your different environments through a single pane of glass. And this is what it will look like. This is a current version of MarkLogic Ops Director. You can see different information about different tasks that might be going on in your system. You're able to move and look at your different clusters in your different areas, look at a particular host, and see what's going on even down to a single computer level. So this is a very important new platform for MarkLogic. It will be released in MarkLogic 9, but we will be continuing to add more and more functionality to MarkLogic Ops Director over the coming months and years. Another thing that we're doing to help you manage your MarkLogic installations is we're adding a telemetry feature. And telemetry just means that with your consent, we collect information, logs, and other information about MarkLogic, and we send that back to MarkLogic. And again, we only do that if you agree. We never take data from you without your consent. And what this allows us to do is have information about your system so that if you call us, if you call our support number, we will already have information on hand that will allow us to work with you, answer your questions, resolve any issues that you have very quickly, because we already have information collected about your MarkLogic installation. And in the future, we will be able to use this information for predictive analytics. We'll be able to see trends in the data about your MarkLogic clusters. So you won't have to call us. We'll be able to see that you might need more capacity in a particular cluster, or you might need additional disk storage in a particular cluster. We'll be able to see those trends happening before they cause a limitation or a problem for you. So be able to be predictive and be a better partner for you with this telemetry information. At MarkLogic, our customers are large enterprises. You saw Gary describe a number of examples of our customers who run their businesses on MarkLogic. They depend on us to always be running, to never go down. So we focus on building capabilities that are non-disruptive. So for example, we have our tiered storage capability that allows MarkLogic to automatically move data between different kinds of storage depending on the value of the data, moving it to the appropriate storage. And we do that so that you don't have to spend too much money on storage. We allow you to use expensive storage for your most important data and much cheaper storage for archived data. Well, when we built that solution, it was very important to us that the data be able to move between tiers without causing any disruption to your application. So even while data is moving between tiers of storage, we want your application to continue running. We don't want to disrupt your operation. Well, in MarkLogic 9, we're adding yet another capability for this called rolling upgrade. And what that will allow you to do is upgrade your MarkLogic cluster. Actually install a new version of the database without taking the database down, without taking your application down. Okay? So an entirely new version of MarkLogic installed on your computers without having to disrupt your operation. And we do this, here's an example of a cluster of MarkLogic running version 8. We allow you to go in and install MarkLogic 9 on all of these nodes, and the cluster will remain running. And as MarkLogic is being installed on all of these different nodes, it will continue to act like MarkLogic 8. But once the cluster realizes that MarkLogic 9 is installed on all of those different nodes, instantaneously it will switch over to MarkLogic 9. So you get an instant upgrade, no downtime. So non-disruptive operations, we do it with tiered storage, we do it with elasticity, we do it with rebalancing, and now we're doing it with upgrades. So those are our main three themes in MarkLogic 9. Data integration, security, and manageability. But there's one more thing. Actually, there's 4 more things because I couldn't decide anything to leave out. In addition to all of the new capabilities that I told you about, we're continuing to enhance our existing capabilities. So for example, bitemporal. You heard Gary talk about bitemporal. This is a fantastic feature that we added in MarkLogic 8 that allows you to look back in time and see your data as it was in the past. This is extremely important for regulated industries because it allows you to show what you knew, that you were following all regulations, and allows you to give that retrospective view. Now that we've had bitemporal in the marketplace for about 18 months, we've had great feedback from our customers who are using it. And they've told us this works really, really well. And here's some additional things that you could do for us to help us with regulators. Regulators are starting to see the way that bitemporal is used, and they're asking for new things. So we're enhancing our bitemporal capability to make it even friendlier for dealing with regulators. So it's going to make it easier for your organizations to provide the kinds of auditing and reports that will be accepted by the large regulatory bodies. Tiered storage, I've mentioned a couple of times. It allows you to spread your data across different tiers, different types of storage so that you get a very cost-effective solution. Well, in MarkLogic 9, we're enhancing tiered storage. We're making it even smarter. So in MarkLogic 9, you'll be able to create very sophisticated policies that describe what type of data belongs in what tier of storage. So for example, you might say that I want all of my trading information for the last 30 days, or 90 days, say. I want that in my Tier 1 storage. My Tier 1 storage is very expensive. It's very fast. I only want to keep data in Tier 1 that I'm accessing all the time. And I want older data to move to Tier 2, and even older data I might want to move to Tier 3, which is stored in a Hadoop file system. And for my really old data, I may want to store it in the cloud as archive information. So that's great, but you may even want more sophisticated policies. You might want to say, on Tier 1, I only want to store data up to 90 days old unless there is a regulatory hold on the data. So for example, you might have a regulator auditing certain things in your business, and you want the data related to that to be very readily accessible. You want to make sure, even if it's 3 years old, you want to make sure that it's in your primary storage. It's in your Tier 1 storage. So we will allow you to create policies, even sophisticated policies, that include rich queries that describe which data belongs on which tiers. So that's really important. But the other thing that it does for you is it makes the database smarter. Because you're telling the database these policies, it now knows where your data is. So when you query MarkLogic, it can be smart. It can say, here's the query, and here's the policies about where data gets stored. I know that I only have to look at a particular tier. I can tell. I'm the database. I can tell that I only need to look at my Tier 1 storage, for example. Or if you're doing a query that involves only historical data, it won't bother your fast, expensive storage that you're using for transaction processing. It'll limit the processing to just the tier that holds your older archive information. And the database will do that by itself. And what that means is you can have mixed workloads. You can have workloads that are accessing your very fast storage, and they won't be slowed down by your tier 3 slow storage. And you can have analytic queries that are running on your historical data that will only touch that historical data and not interfere with your transaction processing. And the database will figure that out itself. MarkLogic will get smart because you're telling it the policies about where data gets stored. So tiered storage is an extremely powerful capability for our customers, and it's getting more powerful in MarkLogic 9. And the combination of bitemporal and tiered storage is even more powerful. So you think about bitemporal information, it means that you're storing a complete history of all of your information. So you never throw anything away. You just keep adding information to the database over time. That's great from a regulatory perspective, but it's not great from a storage cost perspective because you just keep adding more and more and more information to your storage. When you combine bitemporal and sophisticated policies of tiered storage, all of that old data that you're storing with the bitemporal feature will automatically move to inexpensive storage. So it's a great way to get the regulatory requirements through bitemporal without costing you a fortune to store the data. So those features work really well together. Another area that Gary mentioned this morning is geospatial, location. And he mentioned that every industry today cares about location, whether it's government, military, intelligence, healthcare, retail, insurance, oil. Everybody cares about location. So we've had location services in our product for quite some time, and we're making significant enhancements in MarkLogic 9. We're doubling the precision that we use when we store location information in MarkLogic. You can be very precise, within centimeters, on the entire surface of the Earth when you store information in MarkLogic. So very, very high precision coming in MarkLogic 9. And along with that, we're also adding a new, very sophisticated query mechanism for geospatial information. You can already do great queries with MarkLogic on geospatial information. Now you're going to be able to do even more sophisticated queries on geospatial information with a complete set of operators for intersection and knowing whether one object is inside another object or overlapping an object, a full suite of capabilities coming in geospatial in MarkLogic 9. And the last area I want to mention is the cloud. The cloud is very important to us. It's very important to our customers. We have more and more customers moving their projects into the cloud. And several releases ago, we started focusing on features that would make MarkLogic easier to use in the cloud. And we've continued that in MarkLogic 7 and in MarkLogic 8. And in MarkLogic 9, we'll be adding more features for cloud capability. And these will make it easier for you to set up MarkLogic in the cloud, to manage MarkLogic in the cloud, to dynamically grow or contract a MarkLogic cluster in the cloud. It's going to make it that much easier and more effective to use MarkLogic in a cloud environment. But that's not the only thing that we're doing for the cloud. When I think about it, I think that some of our most important cloud features in MarkLogic 9 are not really cloud features at all. You think about encryption. One of the reasons that businesses don't move to the cloud is they're worried about the security of their data. They're worried about what happens if someone breaks into this cloud provider. They're worried about the people who operate the cloud. They're not your employees, they're the cloud's employees. They're Amazon's employees or Google's employees. How do I protect my information when I take it outside of my organization, outside of my four walls, and move it into a cloud environment where I don't control it? That comes back to encryption. Encryption is one of the capabilities in MarkLogic 9 that is going to allow customers to rethink and decide maybe it is okay for me to move into a cloud environment because now I've got all of the security capabilities that MarkLogic has always had. I have encryption capability that protects me from insider threats and from hackers. And I've got mechanisms like element level security and redaction that are going to help me share my information, but do it in a secure way. So this is a capability that sounds like it has nothing to do with the cloud, but I think is going to be very important for allowing people to rethink whether it's time to move into the cloud. And when they do, they'll have all of the capabilities that we're adding to make operation in the cloud very efficient. And I just want to mention one other thing that has nothing to do with MarkLogic 9, but just about the cloud in general. And Gary touched on this morning. We have one version of MarkLogic. The version of MarkLogic that you run inside your building is the same version of MarkLogic that runs in Amazon. It's the same license. It's the same rights. You don't have to write for MarkLogic one way on-premise and a different way in the cloud. You can run a hybrid very efficiently, very effectively. You can mix and match MarkLogic. So you can come to MarkLogic and buy licenses of MarkLogic from us, get the very best price, and you can take those licenses and run them in the cloud. And you might decide that for your base capacity, you know that you have a normal load, you're going to buy licenses from MarkLogic and run them in the cloud because that's the most cost-effective thing to do. But you also know that at certain times, maybe the end of a quarter, maybe certain times of the day, that you have spikes in usage. Well, we allow you to mix and match MarkLogic. So you can take licenses that you've bought from us and run them in the cloud. You can also go to Amazon in the Amazon Marketplace and pay 99 cents an hour and get more instances of MarkLogic, and those instances can be added to your existing MarkLogic cluster. No other database allows you to mix and match that way. No change to your application, no hassles with different types of licenses. We want to make it very easy, very safe, and very secure for people to use MarkLogic in the cloud. So for every feature that I've mentioned about MarkLogic, there are 10 features that I haven't mentioned. These are all coming in MarkLogic 9, and they don't all fit on this slide. There are many, many more features that I can't even fit here. MarkLogic 9 is going to be a massive and powerful release. I'm really looking forward to having you see it. And in fact, MarkLogic 9 is available today in early access. So MarkLogic has an early access program. You can go to marklogic.com and sign up for this program, and you can get MarkLogic 9 today and start working with the great features that I was just describing to you. And we would really like you to do that, and we would really like your feedback. We do this every release. Your feedback is very important to us to make sure that when we release the final version, it's the best possible version it can be. And the early access program allows us to do that by incorporating your feedback early on in the process. So I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll try out MarkLogic 9. I hope you'll send me your feedback. And thank you again for joining us here today.
Thank you so much, Joe.